All right, today we're going to tackle a social signal that is, let's be honest, super confusing. It's that moment when someone forgives you, like genuinely, and then just cuts you out of their life completely. It feels like a total contradiction, right? But as we're about to see, there's a really fascinating and kind of cold logic at work behind it all.
I mean, think about it. You've probably been on one side of this equation or the other. You have a fight, a big screw up, whatever. You apologize, and they say the magic words, I forgive you. And you get that huge wave of relief. But then, nothing. The texts go unanswered. The calls are ignored. Just radio silence. So what on earth is actually going on?
Okay, here's the idea that flips this whole thing on its head. What if the silence has nothing to do with emotion? This quote suggests that we should just throw out the whole idea of a grudge, because what's really happening is something way more detached. It's a rational, mental calculation of your value in their life. You know, our brains are story-making machines. They hate a vacuum. So when someone gives us the silent treatment, our first instinct is to fill in the blanks with the worst-case scenario. We figure it has to be some kind of passive-aggressive punishment. This is our default setting, right? We immediately think their forgiveness was just words, and the silence is the real punishment. It frames the whole thing as this ongoing emotional war, where they're trying to get back at us by withdrawing. But what if that's not the story at all? So let's just pivot for a second. We're going to move away from the heat of all that emotion and step into the cool, clear logic of a simple evaluation. And here it is, the bottom line. They've done the math on you. They've put the energy, the stress, the time, and the emotional toll required to have you in their life on one side of the scale, and the joy, the support, and the value you bring on the other. And in this case, the numbers just didn't add up. The forgiveness was totally real, but the relationship itself, it was deemed a bad investment. So how does a human brain even make such a detached call, especially right after a big emotional conflict? Well, it all comes down to some really high-level mental processing. Let's think of your brain as a big company. So meet the CEO of your brain, your executive control system. This is the part that steps in and says, whoa, hold on. Before we fly off the handle, let's take a breath, look at the big picture, and make a strategic call. It's all about stopping those gut reactions and focusing on long-term goals. And what's the CEO's number one tool? Emotional regulation. Now, this isn't about bottling up your feelings or pretending you're not hurt. Not at all. It's about managing them. It allows a person to feel that anger, to feel that hurt, process it, and then consciously decide not to let that emotion drive the car. And the last piece of this puzzle is something called cognitive inhibition. This is basically your brain's power to slam on the brakes. Your automatic gut impulse might be to scream or hold that grudge forever, but cognitive inhibition is what allows you to suppress that impulse and choose a much more calculated response, like, say, quietly walking away. So you can see how it all clicks together in this little three-step process. First, the conflict happens. That's your trigger. But instead of an immediate raw emotional meltdown, the brain's CEO, that executive control, steps in and just hits pause. And in that quiet moment, a very deliberate choice is made. Not to get revenge, but to disengage, all for the sake of long-term well-being and self-preservation. Now, the thing that makes this whole maneuver possible is understanding a really crucial difference between two words we use interchangeably all the time: forgiveness and reconciliation. They are absolutely not the same thing. This makes it crystal clear, doesn't it? Forgiveness is an internal, solo act. It's a decision you make for yourself to let go of all that anger and bitterness. It's about freeing your own mind. Reconciliation, though, that's an external, two-person dance. It takes trust, it takes effort, and it takes a real desire from both people to rebuild that bridge. And this, right here, this is the heart of the whole thing. Someone can 100% forgive you just to free themselves from the poison of holding on to a grudge. That forgiveness can be totally real. But at the exact same time, their logical brain can decide that reconciling, letting you back into the inner circle, is just too risky, too exhausting, or frankly, just not worth it. They forgive you, but then they fire you from the job of being in their life. Okay, so let's pull all this together. What are the big takeaways when we look at silent forgiveness through this new, more logical lens? Look, the main thing to get is that silence isn't always a weapon. Sometimes it's a boundary. It's a sign that someone is protecting their own emotional energy. They're forgiving you internally, but disengaging externally.
This isn't some petty emotional tantrum. It's a really complex decision driven by the most advanced parts of the human brain. And honestly, just understanding that can totally reframe the whole painful experience and maybe even give you a sense of closure instead of just confusion.
Which, of course, brings us to our final big question. Is this ability to forgive and then walk away the absolute peak of emotional intelligence? Is it a sign of someone who protects their own well-being with surgical precision? Or is it just a new, more clinical, more efficient way to be cold? A way to cut people off with the detached logic of a spreadsheet? What do you think? It's definitely something to chew on.